Hello and welcome to On to the Next Thing. I'm your host, Michael, and today we're going to talk about the greatest TV show in the world. But first, got a little bit of bird news. This week's bird news is a little bit darker than usual because we got a mystery on our hands in Northern California. The headline for today is Mystery of Exploding Birds Deepens in California City as Necropsies Suggest Foul Play. Now, this headline, despite the implication that they're using the pun of foul, as in foul like a bird, for foul play. Despite that implication, they aren't. They just spelled foul the correct way, F-O-U-L. And so it sounds like it's a pun, but probably writer Bill Hutchinson wanted to use the pun, but then was told by higher-ups to just keep it regular spelling. So that's kind of lame. Bill, you got to stick up for yourself in there at ABC News. But so this article apparently in the Bay Area community of Richmond in Northern California, near San Francisco, they've been having a epidemic of exploding birds that residents claim is due to birds perching on power lines and then getting electrocuted and exploding. However, when the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Health did a necropsy on some of the birds, they found the injuries consistent with trauma from a pellet gun or a BB gun or a slingshot. Although I don't know who in San Francisco is good enough with a slingshot to get a fucking bird out of the sky or off a power line for that matter. But honestly, this is a frightening act of bird violence if true, and we will be investigating. And there will be justice done. Anyway, that's some quick bird news. That's about it. That's all there is to the story. They found a guy named Maximilian Bowling who lives there, which I just thought was an interesting name. And this guy he's almost definitely been killing the birds. But he claims that when they land on the power lines, when they land, and it happens, they just quickly explode and it's really violent. And that tells me that, number one, with a name like that, you got to be into some weird shit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Maximilian owns a slingshot and is going after these pigeons. Once again, these stories, they never identify what type of birds it is. They're just like dead birds. Yeah, dead birds. Oh, a mourning dove and a European starling. Well, the European starling is invasive, so that's, they actually did this a service to this country by getting rid of that European starling. But a mourning dove, it already has mourning in the name. Aren't their lives sad enough? I digress. Anyway, people shouldn't be shooting birds, and I hope this isn't this douchebag Maximilian Bowling. No, probably not that much of a douchebag. Bowling said he and his neighbors just want the deaths to stop. It's very traumatic, super traumatic to see this, Bowling said. Although, once again, that might be exactly what a bird murderer would say in order to garner sympathy and misdirect authorities away from their heinous actions. Anyway, this is going to be a bit more of a free-form episode. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my current favorite reality TV show right now, Bar Rescue. Now, I've talked a little bit about reality TV before. I don't watch a ton of it, but when I do, it's usually about food and restaurants in particular. Not so much about food. I don't care for those cooking shows all that much. Like even the ones where like people are getting screamed at, and there's like they use like violent imagery to make you think that Gordon Ramsay is gonna kill a young Filipino man with a butcher knife for undercooking chicken. I don't really care for those that much. It's always overly dramatic. It's like, okay, like the stakes aren't even that high here. Like you're just making food and you might not be making it that well. Like cooking competitions, it's bullshit. No one cares. You're either good enough to make food in a fucking restaurant or you're good enough to make food in a McDonald's. Okay? It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I got a separate beef with Gordon Ramsay that I'll probably talk about at a later date. I just think he's a total turd for nothing. Like, he's a fucking chef. Like, you're really not that important in the grand scheme of things. You can't go be calling people snowflakes when all you do is make people fucking fish all day. You know, it's what a crock of shit. I don't care that he's handsome and fit and has a husky British voice. That doesn't matter to me at all. Anyway, the point is, I don't watch a lot of those cooking shows, but I do like restaurant-based shows because the stakes are always so much higher. There's always someone in any show, whether it's Bar Rescue or I said Kitchen Nightmares. That's not a cooking show. I was thinking of Hell's Kitchen when I thought of the cooking competition show. Kitchen Nightmares is another one in that same vein. It does involve notorious Brit Gordon Ramsay, who I don't really like personally, but it did make an entertaining enough show where I used to watch reruns of it when I was a kid, and occasionally would watch highlights of it on YouTube, except where the clips had like more trendy names. I don't know if you've seen this, where they'll have like where the title for like a clip that they've had on YouTube for like 15 years, but it'll have like a modern like meme, like, oh, when the fucking lamb sauce isn't there or some shit like that, and it's the one where Jordan Ramsay's screaming, "Where's the lamb sauce?" You know, all that shit. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah. Kitchen Nightmares is a good show, but Bar Rescue is a whole nother level, because not only, I mean, Kitchen Nightmares, you had like like people in a similar situation as Bar Rescue, where it's people who have money, or at least had money at some point, whether that was inherited from their poor, overbearing parents, or from like something they were actually successful at, and then they wanted to build a restaurant or something as their hobby, and then they lose all their money because they don't know how to do anything, and they treat the workers like shit, and they hire their stupid dumb fuck friends and family members, and they fuck up the entire kitchen. Like, you know, that's one thing in Kitchen Nightmares, and all of that same shit happens in Bar Rescue, except also everyone's trying to make drinks and get people fucked up and get people drunk. And even better, it doesn't have a single British person involved, as far as I've seen. The host of Bar Rescue is Jon Taffer, this fucking greasy fucking Manhattan this big Manhattan businessman shitbag he owns like a fucking dozen bars and like sponsored a bunch of others. He's definitely got like shady backroom deals with like real estate groups to buy up all the bars that fail when they inevitably go under due to either poor management or occasionally even a poor fucking remodeling by Jon Taffer. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Okay, so the premise of the show, it's similar to something like Kitchen Nightmares, but it's different. With Kitchen Nightmares, there's always something a little different, because restaurants tend to have, you know, more variation between them than, say, you know, than bars. Bars, you know, they might have different themes, they might have different drinks, they might have different styles, or you know, level of income for clientele and things like that. But they're all really there to serve drinks and then sometimes serve food. Restaurants, not kitchens. It's called Kitchen Nightmares, and I'm fucking tired, but what I'm recording because I'm a good podcaster and I keep up my routine. The point is that bars, they all have the same prerogative, which is serve drinks and then occasionally serve food. And so every single episode of Bar Rescue has the same, like, you know, 5 stages, let's say. Let me see if I can count them out. So the first stage is recon, right? So Jon Taffer and his hired boom squad of the week, which usually includes either some chef or like quote unquote cocktail expert that he knows, coming in to scope out the restaurant and see if it's any good. And now they don't go in themselves, because I assume that they pretend that the bar owners or employees might recognize them. Who the fuck are they going to? I guess maybe they watch the show. Who knows? So yeah, you don't send in Jon Taffer. Sometimes, apparently, in the early seasons, Jon Taffer would send in his wife, but then that started causing too many problems and too much random drama, and he got he got sued after basically setting up this one bar owner to be like a scumbag towards Jon's wife, so then Jon could get in a fight with him, and then it got too heated, and Jon almost had a fucking heart attack because he's a big fucking obese Manhattan mafia guy, and I don't know if the mafia hung out in Manhattan very often, but like he's Brookline, let's say Brooklyn. I talk like this, and I'm from Brooklyn. Yeah, he's Brooklyn. Yeah, big fat Brooklyn guy, right? But yeah, the point is he doesn't go in himself. He'll usually he'll either hire like some local like food review people or some type of influencer, early influencers, because a lot of the best episodes are from like 2011 through like 2014 before everyone was a fucking influencer, and so yeah, he'll send some randos in. Sometimes it's people from bars that he rescued before who now quote unquote owe him a favor, as though they didn't make him a fucking show episode already. Like he uses that, like, yeah, they owe me a favor, and it's like, what? Like they made you a fucking show. Okay, you rescued their bar, but at the cost of you humiliating them and tearing down their old idea and making a new idea. Which I guess once again is me spoiling the next stages. Right, recon. Jon sends some randos in. The randos generally have a bad experience because the bar is already set up to be a piece of shit. Because it's a reality TV show, they probably have the employees and the managers kind of exaggerate whatever existing problems there are on camera. Like any drama becomes a big fucking fight out in front of customers. Anyone acting weird, like you act extra weird. Like, if this one's having a drinking problem, like the night that they're doing the filming, like they are drunk as fuck and sloppy as shit and not doing their job. So like shit like that. Like they definitely exaggerate it, and they pretend that Jon Taffer is watching live from like a fucking van illegally parked out front or something. Like they have this van just parked out there, and it looks like it might be parked in front of the bar, but it probably isn't. And they definitely are just like filming this after. But yeah, usually what happens is either there's some sort of confrontation with the people that Jon sends in. And then either they kind of leave and give feedback to Jon, or Jon freaks out and goes in himself. A lot of the episodes as they go on, more and more have Jon be like, I'm so mad, I'm going in there myself. To the point where when I started watching the show, I thought that the whole point was that Jon always goes in there himself to yell at people. But no, the idea was that like, initially it was just supposed to be like either one of his like, bartender buddies or like whatever food reviewers who sent him were just like, they were supposed to get into like a confrontation or have a bad experience at this bar, and then it would just be on film, and then they'd show him talking about it to Taffer, and that would be it. But then it started to be a thing where it's like, okay, Jon Taffer has to go in and then like start getting into fights with these drunk, rowdy people. And that's when shit gets really, like, not really interesting. But yeah, kind of really interesting. Because it's fucking fun. It's fun as fuck. Because not only does Jon Taffer have a Brooklyn accent, which I find to be far more appealing than Gordon Ramsay's British accent, but with Jon Taffer, there is probably like 140% greater chance of there being an actual fight between him and whatever fucking like American scumbags that he's meeting up with in these bars. Gordon Ramsay, like he'll show up, he'll start shouting something, he'll be like, "Oh, you're trying to be a big man, blah 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 blah," but he's not gonna fucking fight anybody. Even though he's like 6'2" and like built, and Jon Taffer is like 5'10" and like obese and like somehow probably just like looks older than he actually is. Like I don't know if he's actually that old, but he almost definitely colors his hair that's like barely covering his weird like Grimace shaped. You know, like Grimace, the McDonald's character. It's like if Grimace was just like a head. Like it has a head that's shaped like Grimace, like the purple guy, except it's just his face plastered on a Grimace made of meat. That was fucking disgusting. That was a disgusting metaphor. But yeah, that's what he looks like. And he comes in and he goes, he'll go flying in and start yelling at these guys like, "You need to get your shit together. Otherwise, I'm not coming back here. I'm here to try and help you, but you're not going to help. If you're not going to help yourselves, I'm not going to help you, and you can fuck off." And he does all that shit. And it's great. It's always so funny because even when it's like, like Jon always wins the argument with a snappy one-liner because he has all the editing, so they can just edit together like a conversation. And then Jon saying something like, "Your wallet's fucking thin. You're losing money. You're a loser. You suck. You're gay. I'm thin. You're fat. You're ugly. I'm handsome." And he just go on and just absolutely bully these people. And generally, if there's any ego involved, it gets squashed either by Jon Taffer or by one of the experts he brings in, which once, like I said, is either usually like a chef that he knows or like some mixologist bartender person, and they'll come in and bust everyone's balls and fucking tell them like, "Oh, your kitchen looks like shit. You need to clean it up. You have bad fucking shit going on here," and it's terrible. And that kind of bleeds into stage 2 a little bit because that initial thing is usually just seeing like, okay, how are customers treated at this bar? Oh, they have a bad experience. They always have a bad experience because it's the shitty bar show. Stage 2 is the initial inspection when Jon comes back the next day and talks to everyone and starts looking at shit and and kind of going through and inspecting stuff. Stage 1 can also have a part where if the bar does serve food, they'll check out the kitchen and they'll be like, "Oh, look, the kitchen's fucking unsanitary. You got to shut this place down, clean everything up, and we'll come back tomorrow. And if it's not clean, we can't do anything here because it's a health hazard, and we can't be working in a health hazard." So inevitably, even the shittiest bars eventually clean things up. Otherwise, I assume they just don't film. Or maybe they just clean it for them because like at that point you're already kind of invested in filming there. So, no matter what, that kitchen gets clean and they come back the next day and they'll have like kind of a general meeting and they'll discuss the problems that the employees think that there are and that the management thinks they have. And more often than not, the management and the employees will be kind of at odds because employees at a bar generally aren't like, career bartenders. Like they're usually trying to transition to something else, or they have like literally no other job skills. So it's almost always hilarious because they're like, "Don't you want to make money?" And it's like, "Yeah, fucking bartender. I get like tips, but like I don't want to be." Generally, they don't want to be doing this shit forever. Some of the older ones do, and that's when it kind of gets sad because if it's a bar run by and maintained by a bunch of older people who have like families and like retirements and shit on the line, that's when it gets real sad. That's when I actually feel bad. But more often than not, it's usually just either some people who already have money and have just sunk too much of their money into this stupid dream they have of being like a fucking Cheers style bartender. Or it's just like kids with no fucking real business and life experience getting bankrolled by their parents and trying to run a bar and they run it into the fucking ground because they suck at everything. And so it's usually one of those three. It's either, three types. There's old people with an old-fashioned bar that's not keeping up with the times and is falling behind on bills and shit. And sometimes, more often than not, there's some substance abuse issues going on. 2 is like people who have money But they just sunk so much of it into this fucking project because they're stupid and they don't know when to cut their losses or change their business practice. And then there's like younger people who basically just have it. It's just being like paid for by their parents. Sometimes like their parents are getting their fucking retirements cleaned out. Like there was one that was called like the Rockin' something Cantina, and it was in Arizona, and it was these brothers and like their close family friend who were like running this bar into the ground, and it was all on their parents' retirement money. Like they're on a second mortgage and shit. They're like $1.5 million in debt or something fucking crazy like that. And that's another part of the show that's always wild, is finding out how much people are in debt, because sometimes it's something that's kind of a conceivable amount of money, where it's like, ooh, I'm 150,000 in debt, and it's like, ooh, that's pretty bad. That's like, you know, that's not quite as much as what a house costs in most parts of the country right now, but it's still quite a sizable amount of money. Um, but then there's like then you have people who are like, oh, I'm $800,000 in debt. I'm like on my second mortgage or something. Like I'm gonna lose my fucking house. And there's people who are like $1.5 million in debt. Usually, if they have like rich parents, or like a whole family kind of working together to try and make a fucking bar work, and then they end up going a fucking $1 million or more in debt, which is it just seems like an insane amount of money. Um, and so yeah, right. The stage two is generally finding out like how much how much the people are in debt, and kind of what are some of the general problems to work on. And then what they do is they do a little bit of they'll do a little bit of training. They'll check to see if the bartenders know how to actually make any drinks, and if if the managers actually know anything about anything. And then there's stage three, which is the stress test. And so in the stress test, usually what happens is, the TV show, they put up a big promotion for the bar, and they just invite a bunch of people from the area and probably a bunch of like low level influencers and like TV extras and actors and shit to come in and just order drinks at the bar, and it's probably like major discounts or something like that for drinks and shit. So it's just supposed to make it as like the most high capacity possible to see if the bar can actually even hold up to greater success if Jon Taffer were to go through the later stages, which is remodeling the whole thing. And so generally speaking, the bars fail the stress test, usually either because it's just like unskilled employees or a poor management system. They just don't have all the shit that they need, and their organization's really poor. Shit like that, like restaurant running shit that will bleed dry anybody who isn't already really wealthy and can spend a bunch of money on getting updated digital systems for orders and shit like that, and actually hiring people instead of just having fucking family members. Yeah, so more often than not, they fail the stress test. People get yelled at. Sometimes there's kind of like a designated person who is like the problem at the bar, and generally speaking, they'll either walk out during the stress test and then maybe come back and maybe not come back. Sometimes the really major problem person gets weeded out even in stage two, where they're just talking about the problems. And generally, the person who's the major problem kind of knows they're going to get fired beforehand, I think, because they'll automatically be really uncomfortable. They'll just be like, no, I just don't want to. I don't want to be around here with all these cameras and shit. I don't want to be here. Blah blah blah. And then they usually leave, or they usually leave either in stage two during the interviews, just talking to Jon Taffer, which I understand. He's fucking abrasive and obnoxious. I'd hate to be in a room with that motherfucker, but. They'll leave during that stage, or they'll leave during the stress test because they just can't hack it. Being yelled at at all sides from customers and from the bartending experts coming in, being like, "Hey, why aren't you fucking pouring that? Hey, you're pouring too much. wow, your work area is sloppy. You got to clean this shit up, and just is going on and on because it's a stress test and it's supposed to make you feel fucking stressful, I guess. Um, but yeah, it's stage 3 is always crazy. It's usually one of my favorite parts is the stress test because it's usually when things can get the most heated, when the bar is just trying to run as it normally runs with like maybe a little bit of training just to just to make sure the bartenders are sort of competent enough where they won't like injure themselves or other people. But other than that, it's like basically no training. It's just kind of trying to raw dog a busy night at the bar, and it's usually pretty funny to watch because everyone kind of fucks up at some point. Occasionally they pull through. Some bars they do have enough talent and they do have like good employees who can actually pull through and make the shit. But like more often than not, it's people who are kind of subpar or like even worse, like actively destructive and just totally fuck shit up. And then Jon Taffer goes like, "You need to fucking get this shit working, otherwise I'm firing your ass right now." Jon Taffer, he every other episode he threatens to fire someone. But he doesn't really have the power to fire anybody because he's not the owner. I've never seen him fire anybody. I've seen him like go over to the manager and tell him, "You need to figure out what's going on. You need to either fire them or I'm walking." And like usually, basically, he'll just be like, "Oh, I'm taking my." He'll do like the fucking like, "Oh yeah, well, if you're gonna be that way, I'm taking my ball with me. No one gets to play kickball now." Where it's just like, yeah, you need to go fire your son, otherwise I'm leaving. It's always like some crazy shit like that. But Jon always threatens like he has the ability to fire people, but he doesn't. He always just goes and screams at the manager and tells them to like need to go and fire them, which is fucking crazy. Also, crazy position to be put in a high stress situation. But yeah, that's usually when it's the biggest shit show, and it's always entertaining every time, even if it's the same things happening every episode. It's always entertaining to see someone fuck up a drink. It's always entertaining to see some fucking bloated alcoholic manager try and handle orders because they don't have enough people to run orders back and forth. It's always fucking funny. Hearing about the one thing that isn't funny about the show is hearing about the implied like very real familial problems and like substance abuse problems that are often running rampant, yeah, something like that, running rampant. Like more often than not, there's people who just like are drinking every day at the bar, like employees who are just stealing liquor and just sucking down drinks all night. Which bad for a number of reasons, like irresponsible, dangerous, and then also causes the bar to lose money. So Jon Taffer hates that shit. He will fucking flip out at people, basically call them stupid fucking drunks and shit. Even though he looks always like he's, already on his way to having a fucking coronary because of how fucking bloated and fucked up he looks. But who knows? Maybe that's not from alcohol. Maybe he's just a really big fan of like bar foods and shit like that, and just loves sucking that shit down. Because I don't know if I've ever seen him. No, actually, I've seen him drink a martini one time. So like, I guess he's like a martini type of fucking mafia guy. But yeah, the point is he always hates the really drunk people, but he bullies them. But it's always like really sad, especially when it's like kind of older bar owners who are kind of like they obviously just are not having fun with this at all anymore, and so they're just trying to drink and hang out with their friends. But then the thing is they hire this guy to come in, and it's like, yeah, you need to help the bar, but in order to get the investment, that means you need to be humiliated about your crippling alcoholism for like 5 days, and then have your bar totally redone, which gets into stage 4, which is like the major training and overhaul session. Basically where they do extra training for the bartenders and for the management and for the food people, Sometimes they'll bring in like outside help if it's a total lost cause. Like if they just have like one shitty chef who can't fucking do anything, they'll just bring in like outside people and be like, hey, here's this culinary student who's gonna be better than fucking Jeff back here who doesn't know how to wash his hands and can't fucking see and can't move orders around because, either because he's old or just like doesn't give a shit. Or they'll bring an extra bartender or something like that. Occasionally they'll even bring in an extra manager, which is extremely embarrassing to the people who were managing before. Like the example that I had with like the Rockin' Cock Cantina, or whatever the fuck it was called in Arizona, with the brothers. Like the one brother is supposed to be the general manager, but he sucked so bad and was so like bad at asserting himself and like doing anything that Jon literally like forced him to give up his position to like some random guy that Jon Taffer hired in from another restaurant, basically just to come in and just like be paid to train this guy Scott. And it's like, that's got to be just the most embarrassing shit, having this guy be like, hey, do you want to lose all your parents' retirement? Or do you want to fucking man up and step down and let this guy fucking boss you around and take your job? It's fucking funny situations like that, because out of nowhere, all of a sudden, because of the way that, all these reality shows are cut, it's like just Jon Taffer screaming at the top of his lungs at this guy, just, hey, what the fuck? Do you think your parents want to see you like this? Do you think your parents want you to be a failure like this? And he'll just this crazy bullying that he does. So that's usually a part of it. Like sometimes people get replaced, and then everyone else gets trained off camera because no one wants to see these people do well until the very end. And then they always add some signature cocktail thing that's from whatever liquor company is sponsoring them at any given time. It's usually always some bullshit cocktail with using like Smirnoff, like flavored vodka, or like flavored Bacardi, or flavored Captain Morgan or some shit. It's always some flavored bullshit that's just getting marketed because it's like a sponsor or something. And it never even looks that good, but it's always like, oh, even if it's just supposed to be like a beer and sports bar, it's supposed to have just like mostly beer and shit. Like they're always like, hey, now you need to learn how to make this signature cocktail. We'll even make it easy so your dumbass can fucking slop together all this fruit and sugar and liquor sludge together into this blue or like just vibrant neon drink. And and then they sell that. And apparently it's almost always a hit because they got a master mixologist to work on it. It's like, yeah, I'm sure it just tastes like fucking juice. And it's like, it's good. It's whatever. But no one wants to be making that shit or drinking that shit. Like it's always going to be a one-off thing. So I don't know. They just do it to showcase whoever their sponsor is, basically. And then they'll usually spruce up the food menu if there's a food menu, or simplify it even better. So you should really just be making one thing because you're slow when you're stupid. So you need to just be making quesadillas, or like you just make pizza and hot dogs. Like that's all you should be making. You shouldn't have anything more complicated than that. You shouldn't be having steak tips and stuff. Like just make bullshit bar food. And I guess that usually helps. Because, coming out of stage 4, which is like the major, final major overhauls, by that point, most of the exaggerated interpersonal issues and like character flaws that you see in the employees up to that point, they all kind of get resolved either off camera or with like a single remark from Jon being like, all right, this has saved your family, right? You're not hitting your wife anymore. You're not screaming at your kid at soccer practice. And the guy's like, yeah, nope, this is good. And then his wife will be there and be like, yeah, everything's fine. This is especially apparent in this one episode where it was like 3 retired firefighter brothers. And the one guy, the middle brother, is just like a roided up drunk. And his wife also worked there, and he was just constantly yelling at her. And it's like, yeah, that definitely doesn't happen at home. Like, Jesus, it's obviously a horrible relationship. But But it's all saved because at one point Jon tells him, "You need to stop yelling at you yell at your wife one more time, I'll fire you right here," which is like crazy. Him getting in between that shit. But I mean, good on him for putting that on TV. But it's kind of fucked up that they would act out like the brother would act that way on TV. Fucking crazy, screaming at your wife and telling her to shut up on camera on fucking live television. Not even live television, syndicated television. But yeah, that was a wild episode and then at the end it's like, yeah, you solve things with your family, right? You solve things with your family, and the guy's like, yeah, I solved it. Like, we're good. We're like good now. And so yeah, John will usually wrap it up at being like, all right, your relationship with your family's better. Your relationship with your wife is better. And your relationship with this this bar is better. It's like, okay. Yeah, John, you saved their fucking marriage, I'm sure. But yeah, it's usually shit like that, all the final revelations. And then you move into stage 5, which is, I'm glad, wow, I nailed it. I knew there were 5 stages of the show, because the final stage 5 is always the remodeling and the grand reopening. And it's usually where, this is the part that's always really hit or miss. Because sometimes a bar will be like kind of just run down, and then they can just kind of spruce it up, and maybe give it a new name, but keep parts of the old theme as like tributes, or like part of like someone's legacy or whatever. Like if it was inherited from the father, they'll have stuff that like the dad liked. Oh, it's nice for the family. Other times, like sometimes the bar is like got a pretty good setup, and so they'll keep most of the theme, or like at least keep the name, and then just kind of like remodel everything. But what's really a crapshoot is whenever fucking pinhead grimace face Jon Taffer has to basically just make up a new bar theme from scratch. Because sometimes it can kind of work. Like sometimes we'll just like take some influence and be like, yep, and then we'll have this idea, and it ends up looking pretty good, and the owners are relatively happy with it, because it's like it still works with kind of their old vision for the bar. But other times he'll just go completely, they'll just like, whatever the production team does just goes completely away from anything the owner had previously envisioned. And they'll justify it being like, you want to make money, right? Your dreams don't matter right now. You not fucking bankrupting your parents is what matters right now. So you're gonna fucking take your dream of having a fucking clown themed bar, and you're gonna shove it up your ass or whatever. No, but the one I'm thinking of, there's one. It was called Pirates Tavern, and is in the middle of like Maryland, or like in the DC area or something. Not even the DC area. It was in the middle of like Maryland, in like the business district, and it was just this fucking like, it was just this like sort of tiki bar, but it's just like totally pirate themed, where all the employees are dressed up like pirates, and very obviously all of these people were all in like, they're all in some type of like, they'd all been in some sort of collective, like some sort of art collective or theater group or polycule or something like that, where they all knew each other, because they were all weird. They all definitely had like some type of mental illness, or like some sort of criminal background where they couldn't get a fucking job anywhere else. They were all like older, but they were all still dressing up like pirates, and making fucking horrible drinks with rum and shit, and making terrible food. And the owner's husband, like her husband is just this horrible little man named Juiciano, who the only thing he said all fucking episode was like, I don't give a fuck, and he just keeps saying that, and he was like the chef, and he didn't know how to make any food, and the food he made sucked, and it was so fucking ridiculous. And so obviously it was a thing where it was all so out of hand that John was like, fuck it, we're gonna make a completely new theme. Fuck pirate theme altogether. Which I'm thinking, like, you could probably, just to make it easier on yourself, just keep something at least kind of maritime. I mean, like, Maryland's on the coast. They have a maritime history. Like you could make it like the fucking custom house or the privateer or something like that instead of pirates bar. But no, instead he was like, this is the business district, so we're gonna make everybody go full corporate, and we're gonna call it the corporate bar. It's like, what the fuck was that? The corporate bar? And it's literally like the sign is just called the corporate bar, and then there's like a silhouette of a businessman with a suit and tie. And it's like, you're really gonna make all these like actor freaks who wanted to be dressed up as pirates, and you're gonna take him straight from like the pirate theme bar to fucking sleek corporate bar where they have to like wear ties and shit and pretend to be normal people. Like that's fucking insane. Like that's way worse than anything that they could have done. Like you've immediately sunk them because you have what, like a week to train these like basically like they're like carnival workers, but you're training them to be like fucking like high class employees, and of course no one likes doing it. No one likes it. None of the employees have a good reaction to it. The owner hates it. Everyone hates it. John's like, what? You want to make money? And it's like, yeah, but they don't know how to do this shit. Like, this is not sustainable. Anyway, I digress. Sometimes the idea is just fucking piss poor. And it's like, it's literally like John is just like trying to punish them for being annoying. like, like, fuck you. I'm going to make you fucking wear a suit at this bar. Like this ridiculous shit that almost seems almost spiteful in how bad it is. But I digress, because sometimes it's good. Usually what they'll do during the remodeling is they'll make the bar new, they'll patch up shit, and they'll repaint things and add TVs or get rid of old TVs. They'll almost always install like a POS system to take in order to track orders rather than having it just be written on fucking napkins and post-it notes and shit. And so that's almost always helpful. So any bar that doesn't have that usually gets one, which is good. And then sometimes they'll add like whatever other shit that the show's sponsors are putting out, like fucking like automatic cocktail makers and like fucking serve your own like pour your own beer taps that are just like at the table. Which is, once again, just shit where it's just like, yeah, this is all just to shill out products. This doesn't actually help the bar at all. And so it's like, sometimes they get shit like that where it's just like, yeah, no, they definitely don't think that this bar is going to ever succeed. And so they're just using it to showcase all their bullshit. Whether it's just fucking like, oh, self-serving beer thing. Ooh, automatic cocktail maker, touchscreen, ordering iPad thingy. Like just bullshit that no one really cares about in the bar. And and they just do that and they just don't even care. And sometimes they'll like repaint shit and they'll like remodel shit that they don't have a fucking permit for. And so all the remodeling ends up getting taken away or like having to be undone because the city comes in and is like, hey, you don't have a fucking permit for this. This is not on your lease, you dumbass. And then they have to undo everything. And so more often than not, whenever that happens, those bars just straight up fail afterwards. And sometimes they fail anyway. It's like it's usually like I don't know. It's something. I think it's around like 50-50 shot of the bars on bar rescue succeeding or not. Which honestly, given the state of some of these places going in and the amount of time they have to fix everything up, that's honestly a pretty good success rate. Sorry. I had to take a bit of water there. But yeah, the point is like sometimes the bars end up succeeding for a while, sometimes they fail. I've really enjoyed looking up because there's like a reality TV show or a reality TV website that talks like kind of like where are they now for like these different kitchen or bar rescuing shows. And like like about half of the bars ended up closing, but like some of them are still open, which is pretty wild. Like the one with the fireman, where one of them's definitely like hitting his wife off camera. like they're still open and they get like relatively good reviews. And some of them stay open for a little while, but then then ended up closing either like a couple months or a couple years later sometimes. Or they got killed by COVID. Like that was a common one where a lot of these bars just get totally fucked up by COVID. And yeah, so it's like there's definitely a lot of them fail. And sometimes it's not Jon Taffer's fault, but sometimes I really think it is. Like that pirate one, like holy shit. Just mismanagement from everyone involved in that episode in every step of the way. But yeah, I have a theory about kind of how the show runs, where it's like it's probably Jon Taffer is not spending. Well, I mean, obviously he's not spending money out of his own pocket. Like the TV studio is spending some of this money, but I'm almost certain that what happens is like it's kind of like even if the bar fails, then it's kind of like being a house flipper, where it's like they fixed up the bar, and so I mean it's probably good for the owners to some extent, because it's like they get the bar fixed up. That means they can just sell it for more if they hadn't really been planning on continuing the bar anyway. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jon Taffer also has has buddies somewhere who have companies that'll buy up properties like this when they get put up for sale afterwards, and then be able to flip them into a much better establishment that that actually brings in profit. I from my very loose research, I haven't quite seen anything about that, but also I'm not keeping track of building permits and leases and grand reopening news from all around the country. So I don't know. I don't really know what happens to some of these buildings when the original bar shuts down. But I really wouldn't be surprised if Jon has some connections in places. Not saying mafia connections. I know I call him a mafia guy a lot, but probably not in this day and age. But like, definitely has connections to real estate people who will snatch that shit up at a relatively low price, because it's such a shit show, and the owners will be desperate for money if they get bankrupted. And then those property management people will just take it and either turn it into a more lucrative, building or stores or something, or apartments or whatever, or turn it into just a much better bar or restaurant that brings in a lot more money, because they won't just have fucking Jon Taffer's crazy TV personality experts coming in. Like they'll have real experts come in and fix shit up. And then I wouldn't be surprised if after all that, Taffer or whoever else is involved in the production gets a cut. Once again, these are all very baseless accusations and allegations. Not accusations, allegations. I definitely heard them from somewhere, allegedly. Don't have any proof for them yet, but once again, kind of like the bird exploding in Northern California mystery, OntoTheNextThing is investigating. We will uncover Jon Taffer's heinous crimes, and I would not be surprised if he is not only blowing up birds with a slingshot, but also baking birds, perhaps 4 and 20 blackbirds. It's not even that funny. I'm just fucking exhausted right now. I was just thinking of him eating, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. Something like that. Yeah. He's definitely like, oh yeah, we gotta get these fucking birds into the pie, and then you got to get that pie out to the customers. Then everybody gets blackbird shots. That's what it is. Everyone gets a shot. You gotta promote to the people. You gotta say, hey, who else wants a shot? Then everyone comes in and gets a shot, and they get a piece of blackbird pie, and it's real good stuff. That's money in the motherfucking bank. Yeah. Yeah, baby. All right, he doesn't really sound like that, but my previous imitations of him, very accurate. I've been working on it a lot. I've been watching a lot of this show. But honestly, it is so fucking funny to watch, especially if you can kind of read between the lines and see like what kind of what type of personal shit is going on behind the scenes in between the cuts. It just becomes such an engaging show, and it's an hour long with ads because right now it's on like Pluto TV or some shit. Which is basically just like you go online so you can watch cable shows with cable style advertisement cycles, which sucks, but at least you kind of know what you're getting going into it. But yeah, it comes out to about an hour per episode. That never feels an hour. It feels like a fast fucking YouTube video. It feels like a 15-minute YouTube video, even though it's like, even with the ads, it's still like at least like 30 something, 40 something minutes of content. It just zips along that fast because between the fast cuts and the snappy dial and the yelling and the action and the sweating and the boozing and the people getting fucked up and thrown out of the bar, like it's always fast paced. It's always crazy. There's always some insane weirdo or multiple insane weirdos involved with the bar. And Jon Taffer is there to scream at them and belittle their insecurities, and then immediately do a coin flip the next day on personality and try and be just like the very calm father figure. I want to really try and get that kind of sound more like Bernie Sanders. I want to try and get this good for you. Yeah, that's a little bit better. I'm trying to make this right. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Okay. Yeah, but then he does that and he does this whole paternal thing, which is just like, you and your father, you and your father, your father, your father. Your father was a gamer and a fiend. Yeah, no, I don't have it anymore. But, yeah, very fun show. Highly recommended. And it's free on Pluto, which is not a sponsor, so, fuck them, but also pretty cool. Yeah, just watch that show. That's all I had to talk about today. This is probably a very fast episode. Once again, keeping it light and loose. But yeah, tune in next time. I'm hoping to once again kind of keep staying with this routine of trying to put out an episode roughly every week. Maybe even I'll get a consistent release time every week. Like maybe every Thursday you'll get a new episode instead of it coming out maybe a Saturday or a Monday or whatever. Like maybe I'll actually figure out a good upload schedule. Who knows? In order to find out, you'll have to keep tuning in. Anyway, this has been On to the Next Thing. I'm Michael, and I'll see you next time. I'm walking out of here. I'm walking out.